So let's finish up protein characterization. We stopped here. We were talking about the nutrition quality of the protein. We started off talking about measuring amino acid composition or determining amino acid composition, and that's especially to determine the essential amino acid and figuring out which one is your limiting or first limiting amino acid. What does it mean, first limiting amino acids? You've probably heard about that in nutrition.
Your essential amino acid that's in the smallest amount.
The essential, you have 9 essential amino acids, the one that is present in the smallest amount compared to everything else. So when we have that information, then we can move on and do protein nutrition quality in general and look at PDCAS. PDCAS stands for Protein Digestibility Corrected Amino Acid Score. So it takes into account the amino acid that is limiting, essential amino acid that is limiting, and it takes into account protein digestibility. And this value is what is used to determine percent daily value of a protein. Let's say you have in serving 10 grams of a protein, and then the percent daily value of the protein, the daily value of protein is what? 50 milligrams, right? So the 50 grams, sorry, not milligrams. So the 10 grams out of 50, that's 20% of the daily value. However, if the protein has a PDCAS of 0.8, what would be the percent daily value? You would take that 20% and multiply it by 0.8. So that would be about 16%, right? Or 18%, 16. Yeah, I did the math right. Okay, so yes, so the percent daily value relies on PDCAS, and how we measure it is we take, first of all, the amino acid score. So we have the milligrams of the first amino acid score in the test protein, and we divide it by the milligrams of first amino acid score in a reference protein. And usually the reference protein is casein, since it's a complete protein. So you get the amino acid score, then you need to get the protein digestibility by measuring nitrogen absorption. And the way to do that, it is still an in vivo assay. They're working on standardizing an in vitro assay. It hasn't been officially approved yet. So unfortunately, the test has to sacrifice animals. So you have the rats that would be fed a certain amount of a protein, and then they will be sacrificed at the end of the study, and then they would measure nitrogen absorption. And then you would get nitrogen absorbed versus nitrogen intake, and then you would get the percent true digestibility. And then the PDCAS is the amino acid score multiplied by percent true digestibility. And then you use that to get the percent daily value, the report on the label. Protein efficiency ratio is also used, but it is limited to infant food, for nutritional labeling of infant food. And why is that? Because it is based on measuring the weight gain per certain amount of protein intake. So imagine every time we eat protein, we gain weight. That would have been terrible. So it doesn't work for adults, it works for infants, and usually they use baby rats in the study, because baby rats are similar to baby humans in their requirement of essential amino acid and then their weight, the ratio of their weight gain. So it works perfectly well. So again, they measure the total weight gain per total amount of protein consumed, and then the corrected PAR, which usually they corrected per reference, and usually it's a casein. The highest PAR is 1. So if you have a PAR value of 1, that means it's a complete and good quality protein. Other test is determining the amount of all essential amino acids and getting amino acid index, measuring protein digestibility in vitro. That means you get digestive enzymes similar to what we have in the gut, and then determine the percent digestibility by monitoring change in acidity over time. So we call this pH shift or pH stat method. That means, when you hydrolyze the protein, what's going to happen, you have carboxyl groups are released, because when you break a peptide bond, you have a carboxyl group release and amine group release. So basically, you will have a shift in the pH, and the pH will go down when you hydrolyze the protein. So with pH shift is you monitor change in pH and the volume, and then you calculate, you convert that to percent hydrolysis or digestibility, or pH stat method where you keep the pH static. That means every time the pH drops, you correct with NaOH. Maintain the pH constant, and then you take the volume you used of NaOH and use an equation to calculate percent digestibility. Lysine availability is another method to determine quality, because lysine usually is, it is an essential amino acid, and usually it gets degraded during processing, mostly due to Maillard reaction. So you want to determine the impact of processing on the nutritional quality of a food product. You can monitor lysine availability. And you do that by spectrophotometric method. You monitor usually the free amine group, because lysine has an extra amine group. So you would measure the reactivity of that amine group with a reagent that would give you a colored compound, and you would measure that spectrophotometrically. Another way to characterize protein is assessing functional properties. And proteins are used in food for different functionality. Either they are natively present and contribute to structure, such as cheese, or you add them as an ingredient for functionality. For example, adding whey protein to a sausage or a meat patty to increase the yield. That means you don't have loss in water by enhancing gelation and emulsification, so you don't have loss in weight during cooking. So you don't lose fat and oil, that is. So you use protein for different functionalities, so you would assess different functionality of the protein, and then in chemical reactions we'll talk about these properties. So with that, finally this lecture is over, and we have 10 minutes, whole 10 minutes to finish the vitamins lecture. Okay, to start the vitamin lecture. All right. Nutrition. Some of you are minoring or double majoring. So what is the definition of a vitamin? Emma? They are required in the body for normal metabolism, but a lot of other things are required in the body for metabolism. What makes vitamin called a vitamin? So proteins are needed, and carbohydrates are needed, fats are needed.
It's needed in very small amounts enough to consider it a micronutrient, but it's still an organic compound that doesn't contribute calories, but like take right now.
This is all wonderful. You're missing one small thing. Vitamin, it's essential. The body does not produce it. So it is needed for metabolism. It's needed in small amount. And it's needed because the body does not manufacture it or synthesize it. So it's called vitamin. All right, what is it? What? Why is it, I can't read. Why is it important to analyze vitamins? Katie.
They serve as cofactors for enzyme reactions.
They do. Nutrition labeling.
Nutrient requirements.
Determine requirement for human intake. That's all wonderful. There is one more thing. What happens to vitamins during processing? They tend to degrade. Some of them are very thermally stable, thermally labile, I mean, and then thermally heat labile, light sensitive, pH sensitive, prone to oxidation. So that's that, everything we said. The current nutrition label, what vitamins are listed? Tehu? Vitamin C, Peter. Vitamin A and C are currently on the label. And that's what we did in lab for Monday group so far. We measured vitamin C in orange juices, different orange juice sources, and determined the impact of processing on vitamin C. Because vitamin C is heat labile. It's thermally unstable, sensitive to light, to pH, and to oxygen. So it's important to monitor vitamin C to determine the impact of processing on vitamin C. And the capstone group is doing something where they have 100% vitamin C, 100% daily value. Did you notice that you lost it during processing?
It did degrade, but we still were able to meet target value.
And did you measure it in terms of L-ascorbic acid or L-dehydroascorbic acid? Both. We'll get to that. All right. The proposed nutrition label, however, takes away vitamin A and vitamin C since no longer it's a major deficiency. So they went towards vitamin D. Sun exposure, I don't think we're getting enough of that. So it became more essential to measure vitamin D. So once this is adapted in terms of you don't see vitamin C anymore on the label, we will no longer have a vitamin C lab, which is sad. But we'll have to replace it by something else. Okay. Well, so there are different classes, and you're all familiar with that. You have the water-soluble vitamins and the fat-soluble vitamins, and the short for that, we usually call them EDIC, A-D-E-K, EDIC, for fat-soluble, and then vitamin C, and then B, you have multiple vitamin B, of course, the B1, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folic acid, biotin, etc. You have several of them. For some reason, there's no B8. Have you ever thought about that? So 7 to 9.
They were first discovered and they're found out to be non-essential.
So the same with the 10 and 11? And there was a 13 as well? Wow, is this from College Bowl knowledge? Okay, so there were, and then they took them away. Okay, and there are different sources of these vitamins, and these are the years that they've been discovered, and you are responsible of knowing the years. Okay, no. Okay, so vitamins, they are not necessarily belonging to one structural group. They vary in their structure. So some have ring structure in them. Others have a bunch of OH and ring structure. Others have an amino acid, like this here is a glutamic acid or glutamate. And then some have a bunch of nitrogen. So they're very, very different. Some are water-soluble and smaller molecule, and those that are over here, you have the long chain hydrocarbons. These would be the insoluble or fat-soluble vitamins. So since they belong to different structural groups, is it possible to analyze all vitamins following one technique? No, it's impossible. They vary in their solubility, they vary in ways of extracting them, and they vary in ways of how we can detect them, given their different structures. So there are different analytical methods that are used to analyze vitamins. Some are bioassays, that means the in vivo use of animals. And it's mostly for vitamin D and vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 can be also determined by microbiological assays. But vitamin D right now is, there are some AOAC method using the rat study, in vivo rat study, and others using HPLC, but depending on the food category. Microbiological assay, the most common assays used are for niacin and folate. We'll talk about that. And then a bunch of chemical assays for the rest of the vitamins. But I have here sensitivity. So we have to make sure that when we apply the assay or when we prepare the samples, we prepare it in a way that we do not expose it to a lot of light, especially, for example, riboflavin and vitamin A are UV sensitive. We do not expose it to oxygen, such as vitamin C and vitamin E. And folate, they can be oxidized, as well as temperature will cause degradation, and pH might cause instability. For example, vitamin C, under alkaline condition, you have high chance of oxidation. So we make sure that we run the experiment under controlled conditions to prevent changes in the vitamin C. So obviously your vitamin is present in a complex system, and it's not always as easy as we did in the lab where vitamin C was in orange juice. It's a very simple matrix. We analyze it directly. Oftentimes you have to extract it out of a complex matrix and then analyze it. Depending on the type of vitamins that we want to extract, let's say if it's water-soluble vitamins, oftentimes it's a combination of heat and acid or heat and alkali to extract, such as thiamine, for example. Fat-soluble vitamins, there's the saponification step, which you're already familiar with, and then solvent extraction, and sometimes use of enzymes. And I'll give you a couple of examples for use of enzyme to free the vitamin for analysis, especially when the vitamin is conjugated or associated with other compounds in the system. So like I said, we have to have several precautions when measuring different vitamins. For example, it would be great to have antioxidants or reducing agents such as beta-mercaptoethanol. Like we saw in the lab today, some of the values, one beverage we had an underestimation and suspected that it went through mild oxidation. So if we add beta-mercaptoethanol, we maintain that the vitamin C, for example, remains in its reduced form. Same as with vitamin A and folate will prevent their oxidation while we're carrying out the experiment. Flushing with nitrogen is also recommended if you're preparing your sample and then there is a waiting step. Flush with nitrogen, make sure it remains in cool storage until analysis. Chelating agent, this one time, actually a capstone again group, they wanted to determine vitamin C in a product that was fortified with iron as well. So they used the method we use in the lab, however, their vitamin C was severely underestimated, and they couldn't figure it out. And then they came and talked to me, and I said, well, did you add EDTA? You have a lot of iron in there. And then they said no. And that was the reason. They added EDTA, and then the experiment worked well, and they were able to determine vitamin C. Controlled pH, that would be specifically also for vitamin C. Under alkaline conditions, it was more prone to oxidation. When we're measuring vitamin A and riboflavin, for example, subdued light. So you would work in a cozy, dark lab. And of course, prevent heat. So a couple of years ago, we had this frozen orange beverage, concentrate, and then in order to prepare it and prepare it fast for the lab, the can was put under warm water to thaw it. And then the vitamin C result was severely underestimated because of that. But it's good to know. Oh, I forgot. Everybody's packing already. Time is up. Okay. Subtle hint. Yes. I only had 20 minutes to teach, isn't it?